Hey guys, welcome back to another video. And for today's video, we will gonna make different crowd control system for your command creations, especially for weapon abilities type command creation. Since with this system, your command creation will not just apply damage to your target, but will also apply crowd control, like stun, silence, stasis, and more. And the good thing about this system is that you don't need to redo everything in your current command creation just to add a crowd control effect. You only need to insert one extra command block in your creation to apply crowd control effect. So, I don't think it would be such a hassle for you then. And without further ado, let's get going. So here, I have 3 sample of command creations. This is just a basic melee, projectile and area of effect skill command. I will going to use it to demonstrate to you the crowd control effects, and how you can easily add crowd control on your command. So anyways, before we proceed to the cool crowd control effects, let's start first with the basic ones. Starting with our first crowd control type, the slow effect. And just by the name of it, I'm sure you know that it's just a slow status effect. We don't need any scoreboard commands for this one since we can just use the effect command. Now to apply the slow effect, I would really suggest that you add it after the damage command. Since I'm pretty sure that we have our own ways of constructing a command for our own weapon abilities type creations. So you don't really need to follow every details of this command. I'm just pinpointing that this is the damage command. And right after the damage command, you could use structure block to move the following command blocks, so that we can add an extra command for the crowd control. Or you could just copy-paste the commands above the damage command to move them up. Since we will be inserting the crowd control command right next to the damage command. Now let's set up the crowd control command here. Also, in most cases you can just copy the damage command, and we can just replace the command after the run part for our crowd control. This is the run part, so let's just replace the command after it. Once again, you don't need to follow all of the details here. I'm just pointing out that you only need to use effect command to make this skill be able to apply slow. You can also adjust the duration and how strong the effect is. You can just repeat the same process for your other weapon abilities command. Like I said, you just need to copy-paste the commands above the damage command if it's only a few commands, or you can use structure block if there are many commands above the damage command. Here is the demonstration on how you can move up the commands using structure block. You just need to move it 1 block high. Now copy your damage command and paste it on the command block above it. Then just replace the damage command itself into effect command. I'll remind you again, it's up to you if you want to change the duration and the amplifier of the slow effect. Now let me add the slow crowd control for the area of effect skill. Also, if there's no command next to the damage command, then simply add one then. And repeat the process that we did. Alright, so that would be all for the slow crowd control. Now let's proceed to Nearsight crowd control. For this crowd control we only need to use the blindness effect. Also the downside of this effect is that it only works on player, since there's no point applying this effect to mobs because it doesn't affect them. But for players, blindness effect also prevent them to sprint, unless it is an ongoing sprint, and will also prevent players to deal critical hits using melee weapons. For the commands, we just need to replace here the slowness effect to blindness effect, and I would suggest that you set the duration to a minimum of 3 seconds. But of course you can adjust the duration to how long you want. Also, adjusting the amplifier isn't really a big deal here. And again, you can just repeat the same process for your other weapon abilities command. Now let's proceed to blind crowd control. This crowd control will work for players only also. But compared to the Nearsight crowd control, we will be using camera command here instead of effect command. With this crowd control, the player will be enabled to see anything on their screen. This would be perfect for an escape skill command. Now for the commands we only need to replace the effect command to camera command. It will be up to you on what color would you like to set to cover the screen of the player. And you can also adjust the duration here. Then let's just repeat the same process to other skills. Now let's talk about the silence crowd control. This crowd control is designed to work on players only. When a player has this status, you will be able to see 3 dot particles above them. And players with this status will not gonna be able to cast their skills or abilities. Although this one is very dependable on how the players activates the skill or ability commands in your world or server. Well, almost all of my weapon abilities commands are activated by sneak detection. So if all of your commands can be activated using sneak detection, then this would be perfect for your creation. For the commands, we will need now to create a scoreboard objective. And create a new command block tower for it. Just follow these commands. These first 3 commands are just for the 3 dot particles. And this one will disable sneaking for the player who is affected by this crowd control. This will simply reduce the duration of the silence effect. And once the duration ends, players will be able to sneak again. This will just remove all trace of silence effect on a player. Now let's apply it to our skills. We just need to replace the camera command here to scoreboard command. By the way, you can modify the duration of the silence here. Just remember that every 20 score value here means 1 second, and since I set it to 60, it means this will apply 3 seconds silence to the target. Let's do that to other skills. There, my 3 skills can now apply silence effect. Now here we have root or immobilize crowd control. This crowd control will prevent an entity to move. This works perfectly fine for players or mobs. Although they can't move, players and mobs can still move their head to look around. Also players can still sneak, which means they can still activate skills. When an entity has this status, you will see this white particle thingy around their feet. Now for the commands, we need to create a new scoreboard objective for this one. Now here are the commands. The first command will be the command for the particle effect. And this one is the command to prevent players to move forward, backward, and sideways. This will prevent players to jump also, making them stay on their place only. Well, since we can't use input permission command on mobs, this command will prevent mobs from moving. And this will reduce the duration of the root status. And this one will enable back the jump movement for players that are affected by silence once the duration ends. This will enable back the lateral movement for the players after the silence status ends. And this one will remove the slowness effect to all mobs after the silence status ends. And this will remove the trace of the root status. Now let's apply it to the skills. Since we are using scoreboard command here already, let's just replace the silence to root. And just do the same to other skills. Done. Okay, let's proceed to stun crowd control. Players or entities that are affected by this status will be enabled to move just like the root status. However, Players or entities with this status are more immune to displacement, which means they can't be knocked back easily compared to root status. Also, players will be unable to cast skills since their sneak movement will be disabled. And players will be unable to control their camera as well. When a player or entity has stun status, you will see this white circling particle around their head. Alright, now here are the commands we need. We need to create a new scoreboard objective for this one as well. And here are the commands. For the first command, this command will summon an armor stand named stun_particle 100 blocks above the entity that has stun status. And this make the stun particle armor stand to stay on its place and spin. And this one will make the stun particle armor stand to kill itself when there's no entity with stun status 100 blocks below it. And this will be the circling particle. When a player or entity has stun status, they will constantly be teleported on their place until the duration runs out. But because of this command, I would recommend that you turn off the command feedback gamma rule if you don't want to be spammed with tons of teleport chats. This will disable the sneak movement for player. And this will reduce the duration of the stun status. So when the duration ends, players will gain their sneak movement again. And this one will remove all trace of the stun status. Now to apply it on these skills, we only need to replace the root to stun. As easy as that. Perfect. Next, here we have the Airborne crowd control. This crowd control will make player or entity to fly up in the air. And while they are in the air, they will gonna have the same movement restriction like the stun status provides, except the immunity to displacement. This status will end once they hit the ground again. So for the commands, we need to create a scoreboard objective for this. Now these are the commands we need. This command will teleport players or entities up in the air as long as there's no block above them. And while players are in the air, their camera movement will be disabled. And this one will disable the sneak movement for players who are airborne. And this will reduce the duration of airborne status. Once the player hit the ground, the camera movement will be enabled again. Same goes for their sneak movement. and this will remove every trace of airborne status on them. Now to apply it, let's just replace the stun to airborne. I would also suggest that you only put a very low duration for airborne status, considering the fall damage and fall duration. Then just do the same thing on other skills. Alright. Next here we have is Fear Crowd Control. This status is actually working the same as the stun status. However, players or entities that are affected by this status will spin rapidly. And it will also disrupt the camera movement of the player even more. If the player has this status, you will see a skull particle emitting from them. Now for the commands. Of course we need to create new scoreboard objectives for this one. For the first command, it will simply be the skull particle command. This will make the player or entity with fear status to be teleported on their place while spinning constantly. Now this will furthermore disrupt the camera movement of the player. And this will disable the sneak movement of the player affected by fear status. This will reduce the duration of the fear status. And this enable again the sneak movement for players when the fear status end. This will clear the trace of the fear status. So let's just replace the airborne here to fear. And let's increase the crowd control duration here a little bit. Cool, let's proceed to the next one. Now here we have the Morph Crowd Control. This status works best for players, since only its partial effect will be effective for mobs. When a player has this status, they will be turned into a rabbit. While in this state, they will gain slowness effect and max weakness effect. Also while in this state, players will be unable to jump or sneak, which means they won't be able to cast skills also. This one needs quite a lot of commands. Let's create first the scoreboard objective for this. Now do these commands. Now this first command is to hide the upper body of the player. And this one will hide the lower body of the player. This one will apply slowness effect to the player or entity with morph status. And this one will apply weakness effect to them. This will disable the jump movement of player with morph status. And this will disable the sneak movement of the player. Now this one will summon a rabbit named Morph at the player's location with morph status. This will keep the rabbit to stay close to the player with morph status. And this will kill the rabbit by sending it to the void once there's no player with morph status nearby. And to prevent the rabbit from being killed, we need to add max resistance to it. This will reduce the duration of the morph status. And this will bring back the upper body of the player. And this will bring back the lower body of the player. This will remove the slowness effect once the morph status ends. And this one will remove the weakness effect. This one will enable again the jump movement of players once the duration ends. This will enable the sneak movement for players once the duration ends. And finally, this will remove all of the trace of morph status on a player or entity. Now these are all the commands we need for the morph system. Then let's just replace the fear to morph to apply it here. Awesome! Now onto our last crowd control system. And for our last crowd control, it will be the Stasis. This status will only work for players. This is inspired to League of Legends Jonya's Hourglass. And if you are playing Mobile Legends as well, then you might be familiar with the Winter Crown. When a player is in stasis state, all of their movement will be restricted, which means they won't be able to sneak, meaning they won't be able to cast skills also. However, while on this state as well, players will be immune to any damage and will be intargetable from normal means since their game mode will be set to spectator mode. Unless you could also modify your command creations that will make players to be intargetable by skills while in this state, then that would be even more better. And as you can see, when a player is on this state, these glowing particles will be emitted. Now for the commands, let's create our final scoreboard objective. And this first command is the new creaking particle. This will be the second particle effect. And this will disable the camera movement of players while on stasis state. This will disable the other movement of the players while in stasis state. Now this will set them to spectator mode. And this will reduce the duration of the stasis state. And this one will enable again the camera movement of the player once the duration ends. And this will enable back the other movement of the player once the duration ends. Now this one will set again the game mode of the player to survival or adventure mode, depending on what mode you want them to be set in after the duration ends. And of course, this one will remove all of the trace of the stasis state. Alright, we're done. Let's just apply it here by replacing the morph to stasis. Now these 3 skills can apply stasis effect now. Alright, so those are all of the crowd control mechanics we have here for today. I hope you find it useful. And if you did, then why not giving it a like and share to your friends so that they will also learn about it. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't yet. Now before I end this video, special mention for my channel members for furthermore supporting this channel. And if you are interested to support this channel even more, feel free to join our membership. So that's all guys. May all of us have a good day, and see you soon.